Welcome to the Patrick Real Estate Show, where we explore the fascinating world of real estate investing with your host, Patrick Switek. Patrick is a dynamic young entrepreneur and an accomplished real estate investor who's passionate about helping others achieve financial freedom. Each week, we sit down with some of the most inspiring individuals in the real estate industry and delve into their personal journeys, lessons learned, and secrets to their success. Let's dive into this week's episode.
Mychele, welcome to the Patrick Real Estate Show. I am so excited to have you on. For the people that don't know Mychele, she is a rock star short-term rental operator, and she's recently transitioned into RV parks. She's got some big things planned when it comes to funds and potentially even expanding the RV park infrastructure and acquisition strategy. But we'll hear more from her and her story on how she did that. Without further ado, Mychele, welcome to the show.
Hi, Patrick. It's great to see you.
Great to see you too. I want to do a little bit of backstory for the people that are listening. I was browsing through on Facebook, I think it was a Facebook group at one point, where I saw one of your comments and just naturally wanted to reach out to you through message and realized that you have two mutual friends with me, one of them being my girlfriend and the second one being my girlfriend's really close friend. And turns out you are the mother of that friend, Taylor. So that is such a small world. And I had to talk to Taylor and say, hey, listen, your mom is crushing it in the space. What the heck? How is she in the same industry as me? This is wild. And here we are. I've always wanted to really dive a little bit deeper to your story, and I think this is the perfect opportunity to do so. How did you get started? Let's hear it.
Oh, God, our starting story. So let's see. I've always been interested in real estate. I've always loved houses. I've always loved the space. Unfortunately, I never really dove in. And then during COVID, I finally was just sitting around one day and had a friend over for dinner, and she had been investing in real estate for a while, and they had retired before COVID. And then during COVID, they just up and moved to Tennessee and bought like a couple of cabins. And I was like, how did you just up and move? And so she came home, came back to visit some of her properties here and had dinner with us one night. And her husband kept mentioning the word cash flow. And my husband turned around and looked at me and he was like, funny. He goes, I think we could do that. And I was like, oh, we could totally do that. So the next day I actually reached out to a real estate agent and I was like, this is what I want. This is what I'm looking for. And we started in long-term rentals. And I don't even know if I mentioned that I had reached out to my husband, but the following day he went out and played a round of golf and the real estate agent had reached out to me and she's, hey, I know we're meeting this afternoon, but I've got this pocket listing that I think you'd really be interested in. And so she's, do you want to come out and look at it? So I was like, yeah. So I texted him. He didn't respond. Texted him again. He didn't respond. I went out and met the real estate agent, texted him a couple more times. He didn't respond. Put in an offer on the house, called him. He didn't pick up the phone. Started driving home. And then he finally called me back and was like, oh my God, are you okay? And I was like, oh, hey, we bought a house. It's going to be fine. We'll talk about it later. And I hung up and he had the worst round of his life.
I love that.
So that was 20 properties ago. God, if I counted up spots, I guess that would be equivalent to over 120 doors now.
Wow.
Counting RV parks. Yeah. So I keep telling him that I am playing the longest game of I told you so in the history of man. So
You're never gonna let it go. So there's that. You'll never forget.
Oh no, he'll never forget. And honestly, now he's a little more easy. Like I joined a mentorship group the other day for $30,000 and he just sent me a text and he goes, my credit card says you charge 30 grand. Are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. We joined a group. And he goes, can't wait to hear about it.
You start trusting somebody after a few deals, I think. Oh, wow, this thing actually works.
Yeah. I don't know if I told you, but he retired out in October.
Oh, sweet. He was doing tequila sales, right?
He was working for the manufacturer for a major spirits company. He worked for Casa Cuervo. So yeah, he has fully retired. He's done. He's never going back to the industry. And he is working harder, but actually happier than I think he's ever been. So
wow. Hopefully his round of golf is a lot better now that he's not stressed out at work anymore.
Yeah,
So there's
he's had
that.
a lot more time. He's had a lot more fun.
There you go.
So you should ask him while he's on the park in Branson. That's where he's at right now, but he'll be fine.
Yeah, there you go. So obviously the first deal that happened, but how did you eventually end up in the short-term rental world?
So we had purchased a bunch of long-term rentals. We're pretty stable, had a pretty good income
Yeah.
going. And this was a side gig. And we were actually, it was interesting how it happened because we were actually brought a piece of resort zone land in Scottsdale. And I had never done anything in that kind of a space. And so when we started looking at it, it was something that I wasn't totally interested in.
Mm.
Because I wasn't sure I could pull it off. It was a piece of dirt and I would have to build the resort on top of it. And I'd never done that before. And this is probably 6 months into our long-term rental situation. So I'm brand new in the space and I'm like, no, what we're doing is fine. The formula works. I really don't know if I want to do that. And so it was priced at 1.6 million. And I was like, I don't really know. So I said no. They brought it back a couple weeks later and they lowered it to 1.2. And I still was like, no, I'm not really sure. I was still playing in like the $300,000 to $600,000 range of long-term rentals that were cash flowing about $1,000 to $1,200 a month. And I thought, okay, I'm safe. So they brought it back. It was 1.2. I was like, no, I'm still not interested. They came back with 900. I got cocky and said, I'll tell them we'll give them 500,000 in cash. And they came back at 700 and I was like, nope, 535, not going any further. They came back at 565 and we ended up buying it. Now I've got this piece of dirt that I don't know what to do with, but it's resort zone, so I know it's valuable. I actually got the plans, the architecture books, everything was done, stamped, ready to go. All I had to do was find a builder. We
What year was
figured
this,
out
by the way, Michele?
this was the villas.
No, what year was this, by the way?
Oh God, this was 2021. Yeah, it was
2021.
2020,
Okay, so
2021.
so middle of COVID.
So we actually, and we had been doing long-term rentals for maybe 6 months at this point. So we're still brand new. So I took this property, we took the property to the bank and we were like, we really want to build this resort. We've got all the plans. This is what we've done so far. And the bank agreed to do it for us. So we got a construction loan for $2.5 million and went out to find a builder. Found a builder, broke ground, and I realized at this point I had never done a short-term rental ever. And I should probably figure out how that works.
It's like that book where it's shoot then point. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, that's
it's
very
like
much
just
how
figure
I
it out.
work. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm very much about learning, falling forward. And I turned around, started doing a bunch of research, found this one area on the Forgotten Coast that doesn't have any hotels, and figured out, okay, if I buy one here, I can rent those out. So called my real estate agent, said, this is what I'm looking for in this area. Can you find me an agent? She contacts an agent out there. The agent calls me back in an hour. And very much the same story happens again. I tell her exactly what I want, how much I'll pay, what I'm going to do with it, and tell her how much I'll pay her. And she was like, great, when can you be here? Everything's moving fast. This was on a Friday. And I said, okay, I'll be there Monday and I'll give you 12 hours. So I go into my husband's office, my poor husband, and I tell him, hey, you want to go to Florida? And he was like,
Not telling him why exactly, but just do you want to just visit?
I was like, and he was like, why are we going to Florida? And so I was like, just hear me out. These are become probably his most feared words out of my mouth at this point is just hear me out. And I tell him my plan and he's okay, let's go. So we fly out Sunday night. Monday, we spend the entire day with our agent. She shows us everything and I'm not really finding what I want. And so finally she's, you know what, I've got one listing that's not listed yet. She goes, they're planning on listing in July. They're currently building a house. But if I can get you in, do you want to look at it? And I was like, yeah, let's do that. So she takes us, I think I was in the house for 5 minutes. I remember later my husband had made a comment about the color of the inside of the house. And I was like, it isn't really yellow, is it? I could not remember what the inside looked like at all. We spent 5 minutes in the house. We left, got in the car, headed towards the airport. I called the agent back and I said, this is how much I'll offer them. I'll rent it back to them until January. Then they have to leave and we're gutting it. So they took the offer, turned around, rented the house back to them. And that actually, when they left, we gutted it. It took 2 months to gut it and redo the whole thing, added a mod pool and a volleyball court. And that was our first short-term rental. And the first thing I learned was hiring a property management company in the area was probably the best thing I ever did. So
Why you say that? Why not self-manage?
I have gone into this business in order to be an owner. I'm not necessarily a technician. And I think that it is better use of my time to hire people who are better at it than I am.
There you go.
That rental did really well for us, but I don't have the capacity or the bandwidth to answer phone calls or to deal with, the things that can go wrong. And there are people who are wonderful at that. And it gives them the opportunity to shine, and it gives me the opportunity to shine in what I'm good at. And apparently that is identifying deals and securing them. So I hired this great property management company. And when we went out to furnish it, we actually ended up with 2 more properties in the area. That actually worked out really well for us. Those properties are gangbusters for us. They do really well. They're on the beach. Our property manager does a bang up job at what she does. She's very local to the area. So she's a smaller boutique property management company. They do great, but it's when hurricanes come in, they're there. Whenever something goes out, they're there. They're there to handle all the cable issues. If somebody's unhappy, it's just a wonderful fit to have another group. That's what they specialize in. That's not what I specialize in. And so
That's great.
I think you have to know your strengths. And it frees me up to do the thing that I'm good at. And my thing is to find other properties that I can hand to another operator and cash flow off of so that they can make the money that they need to feed their family and I can ultimately build my empire.
I think that I would give you more credit than just identifying deals and putting them down under contract. You definitely do a lot of value add from what I've heard. That is a big undertaking too, meaning adding value to the asset post acquisition. There's that. And so that also helps you be at a lower basis. And so that protects you on the downside, which is good. So yeah, I'm curious.
So
Sorry?
I love to value add my properties.
Yeah.
I love going into that space of it. I love all of that part. I do not love handling phone calls. Which is okay. We all have our strengths, and I think it's healthy to recognize them.
No,
So
100%. But
yeah.
one strength that we just brushed over, but I wanted to ask about is how were you able to jump into deals so confidently without overanalyzing? There's people that overanalyze the deal and look at all the different aspects. Correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like you just jumped in and I'll figure it out. So I'm curious, like, how did you gain the confidence to do that and to take on deals and understand that they're valuable?
There's always different ways that you look at things. I always joke that I am very much the person in the relationship that would jump off a cliff before I realized there's water. And my husband is very much the one who looks for the water before he jumps off the cliff. And I think sometimes you need that good balance. But there are also different aspects to it. Like when we go into deals, I do some research. Like I said, when I researched the properties on the beach, I made sure that it consistently fell within a certain demographic. It consistently fell in the top places to rent for short-term rentals. I did research on that end. So it wasn't like I completely was out of the blue. The resort that we built is in a very special location. It's right outside. It's 200 steps from a golf course that is one of the busiest in North America. It does 87,000 rounds every year. And they are not allowed nightly rentals within 10 miles. So we're the only nightly rental zoned area for 10 miles around us. And our biggest competitor is the Four Seasons. So it's not that
What did you do with that development? What did you do with that development?
We built it. We own it. We run it. We were actually just there last week staying there for a conference. So we built it into 4 townhomes that are 2,500 square feet. They sleep 16 each. Very large chef-styled kitchen. We've hosted waste management events. The amateur LPGA has stayed there for an event. The winner was actually there, and all of her group and her friends they rented the entire place. And it was steps from the actual golf course where they did the event. We have a lot of executive retreats, bridal parties, bachelor parties. golf guys trips, all kinds of stuff. So it focuses more on executive luxury rentals, and it keeps us extremely busy. So that works out really well. Even during the summer right now, as I'm looking over at our bookings, we're pretty solid. Not as busy as we were during on season, but definitely solid throughout the entire hot season, which is amazing because it was 110 degrees there. Yeah. But we also base all of our properties, like we get a lot of properties sent to us all the time. And when we do the evaluation on them, what we do is we see how they balance out each other. So we know Scottsdale is busy from about September all the way until about the end of May. That's usually the busiest season.
Right.
Our beach houses and our RV parks offset that because their busiest time of the year is usually from about the end of February or spring break starts all the way until Christmas. So there's an overlap, and the busiest season is usually right between there. So they overlap each other. So something is always cash flowing to offset something else.
That's awesome. That's great. I've always thought about, because Joshua Tree is a summer market. So I always thought about offsetting that with a Michigan home or something like that. It's just, or sorry, let me backtrack. It's a dead during the summer. So I wanted to offset that with something that's really high cash flow during the summer. But that's, that's a good strategy to always have cash flow that way. Now, let's talk about RV parks. How did you end up in the RV park world? What made you want to get into that? And yeah, just walk me through that.
Okay, that was actually another flick. See, I'm very big on when an opportunity and shows itself, you should probably really evaluate why it's being shown. And sometimes it's not a huge, like, why is it being shown, but more of a, maybe we should just jump on it and see how this whole situation rides. We had just finished building our resort in Scottsdale. The pro forma on that is that one should net about $300,000 a year based on just those properties. So now at this point, we've got our long-term rental portfolio, which does extremely well and is our basis for our income. Our short-term rentals were doing well, and then our resort was just being built, and literally we were opening the doors. My husband decided that he was no longer going to work for his W-2 anymore.
So you retired your husband. Can you say you retired your husband? Is that true? Is that
I did retire my husband. Yeah. Awesome. The whole thing is when we actually started investing, his joke to me was always, once you match my income, I'll quit. And I matched his income in a year and a half, and he still didn't quit. And he was like, let's just coast it. Now we're used to having two. You're friends with my daughter. She spent last summer in France with me. Yeah. My youngest was in Japan. My youngest right now she's in Europe right now. She just landed in Paris. Yeah. And so you get used to a certain lifestyle and you want to benefit from that. So at this point, we're now used to having two. So now that we've got this resort opening up, my husband was like, this should match my income again. So we're good. I'm done.
So he's a stay-at-home dad. Is he a stay-at-home dad at this point?
No,
I know. I'm joking. No, he's working with you, right?
He's in charge of all renovations and all of our projects.
Oh, sweet. So you said that he's very good at looking down and making sure the water's there before jumping. So I'm assuming that role would be really good for him to be able to be more I don't know. I'm just assuming to manage projects through completion would be a really good role for him. So
yeah, he's really good. He underwrites all of our deals. I didn't realize that we were doing that at the time. You don't have to be brilliant to make lots of money in real estate. I'm just going to put that out there. But he underwrites all of our deals and does a lot of analyzing, where I'm more of off the cuff of I'll dirty underwrite it, where I'm like, if we do this and we can make this much and we do it for this long and we're 60% at capacity, blah, blah, blah. In my brain, I'll calculate that out and I'm like, I think this is a good deal. And then he'll actually go back and really work out all the numbers to make sure exactly what it is. Yeah. So we made a really good team of somebody will send a deal. I'll filter through it, see if it's a good one, and then shift it off to him. And then he'll actually break it down.
There you go.
And then we'll both go out and look at the property. And then I'll say, okay, I want to do this and I want to do that. And we need to tear this down. And he'll tell me how much that's going to cost. And then he'll figure out how much we need to raise to make that happen.
Yeah, that's a
So
power duo. You
we,
guys are a power couple. You know that, right?
yeah, we do really well together. So he's definitely more the integrator and I'm definitely more of the
I was
visionary.
I was going to say. So curious, since you're the visionary, and there's probably other people that are listening that have maybe a spouse on the sidelines. How did you convince your spouse to come through? Because throughout the story, you could see how he kind of like over time was being more receptive to the idea of real estate. But how did you get him over the cusp and get him working with you?
After that first deal, I literally went out, put in the offer, came back, listed on Zillow, got a bunch of applications, and showed him, look, I'm making extra money doing nothing. This is all I did. He was like, okay, I might be a little on board. And he was on board with trying it a couple more times. By the time we were making like 25,000 a month extra by doing nothing, he was really on board. Because
There
then
you
he
go.
was like, okay, this might be solid. Then when we started jumping into bigger deals and he realized how much money we could make doing that, that was when he was like, I'm done. This is all we're doing. And so I think that saying the proof is in the pudding, I
Hmm.
think that kind of definitely showed him like it was. And I don't always recommend going out and like buying a house behind your husband's back. It doesn't work for everybody. We just have a
Yeah.
very fun relationship. Apparently it's okay. So um, I know,
Very
like
much.
when I look back on it and I tell that story, but he's, oh my God, I'm like, please don't do that.
Yeah.
Patrick's a
It's
little
more.
easier going. Yeah. We had money in reserves to be able to do something and take the risk. Yeah, I don't, yeah, I'm going to put that little disclaimer because I don't want women running out and going, oh my God, she said I could. So,
Yeah. Disclaimer,
um,
disclaimer.
right. But I do think that showing them how it works, and if it's something that you truly believe in and you're passionate about, I think that the right partner will always support you, at least in some capacity. It'll either be yeah, why don't you start researching this, or let's look into it a little bit more. Let's have a couple conversations. Let's go to a mentorship group. Let's talk to some people. I think they would at least be supportive enough to explore the idea with you and then maybe jump in on a littler capacity. Our long-term rentals were a great way for us to jump in. Very little maintenance on our side. We have had the same tenants the entire time we've had them for 4 years. I did all the screening, I did all the work when it came to all of that, which was great because it made it easier for him to accept it. It wasn't more work on his part. When we went into building the resort, I think he just had a lot of fun with it. And it was
Hmm.
something that he enjoyed doing. And I think he realized during that process that he actually enjoyed what we did over here as opposed to having his W 2. On the side of that, his W 2 was also, they were going through a reorganization and they were making him miserable.
Mm.
And he was just to a point of, I'm tired of running people. I just don't want to do this anymore. And so he was visibly becoming less and less tolerant of his W 2, at least to us, the family and friends. And as we were progressing through all of that, as soon as the villas opened, he saw the potential and was just like, I'm done, I'm out. And so that's actually when he introduced creative finance to me because I had never done a creative finance deal before. And so he was like, I want you to watch a couple YouTube videos. And we started watching creative finance videos. And I was like, oh, yeah. While he's telling his boss what he thinks, I was sitting there going, oh, I could totally do this. This is easy.
Mm.
And signed up to get more information. And that is actually where the RV part came in because at that point we realized we can't go back to doing single homes. We've now built this resort. It's going to cash flow us more than any of our homes have ever done. We need to move into a different arena. And actually, through one of the mentorship programs that we joined, they brought us our first RV park and it was overpriced, which thankfully we had learned how to negotiate prices along the way. So we went into the first park and started evaluating it, underwrote it, realized it was not worth what they were asking for. Started doing a bunch of research into RV parks, and we're like, I think we could probably do this. Like, we've only done luxury resorts, but how hard could this be? And so went in, connected with the agent and the seller, and got that $3 million park down to a 1.8 million price tag, and actually jumped into it zero money out of pocket, raised the capex completely, brought in one private money partner,
How did
and
you
turned that 2-star park to a 5-star park.
How did you convince the seller to go down from 3 mil to 1.8?
We actually went in. He had no books. One of the things that we found with RV parks is that a lot of people, there's a lot of them are mom and pops, and so
Mm.
they don't always keep very good books. And with that, we had to go in and basically it was a prove your price situation. So when we went in, he was like, "Oh, we've done this, and we've had these groups. Okay, prove it to me. Show me your books." And he couldn't prove anything. And so what we had to go on is we had to go back and rebuild his books based on what we could see. So we actually went back into the park, did a bunch of research without them realizing it. We went into the park acting like we were looking for a place to stay
Mm.
and figured out who all was staying there, how much everybody was paying, and then went back and rebuilt his books for the year with a couple of one-offs. Yeah, if you're a little busier in the summer, you might make this much, but based on the fact that this is what we see, this is what we'll give you. And when we went back and showed him, this is what we rebuilt from what we can see, he agreed and was like, yeah, let's just all do the 1.8. So we ended up at 1.8. But he
Okay.
seller financed about $500,000 of that.
Mm.
So he seller financed $500,000 of that. We brought in a private money partner at 10% equity for another, I think it was 30%. And then he actually sponsored us at the bank, because when you go into a commercial property like that, you either have to have done deals that are similar, a couple of them, and proven that you can do it, or you need to bring in a sponsor who has done deals of that sort of type. And so the private money partner had actually built up 7 hotels in that specific area and had a really good relationship with the bank. So he introduced us to the bank and they gave us preferred terms. And actually, instead of doing a 60% loan, which is standard on those kind of assets, they actually gave us an 80% loan.
Wow, 80% LTV?
Yeah.
Sweet.
So it was great.
Sweet.
So yeah, so he got us in the door for that. And we ended up getting the entire 1.8 plus a CapEx that we could use right away to turn the park around.
That's incredible. And walk me through the idea of why RV parks. Are they similar to short-term rentals? Are they not? What was that transition like, just in general?
Okay, so anybody in real estate investing knows mobile home parks are basically cash cows, right? Low maintenance, people usually bring in, they rent the land, and they usually cash flow phenomenal. So a lot of people are always looking to go into mobile home parks. RV parks are basically short-term rental mobile home parks, if you think about it. I've got the same model as a mobile home park, except you're paying me to stay on my spot for a couple of days to a week.
Mm.
So it is literally the same thing. I charge $65 a night. You bring in your stuff. I don't have any cleaners. I don't have to worry about that. I have one maintenance guy who handles the entire park, and all he has to do is use the leaf blower to blow off the pad to get it ready for the next guest. So extremely low overhead. I have one park manager that lives on site. She gets free room and board and gets a salary. She handles all the back end stuff. Everything's automated at this point. She handles the phone calls, puts everything into the system.
Mm.
So it's like a short-term rental in the fact that I am capitalizing on people needing a place to stay, but I always say they bring in their home, they take their home with them. So it's kind
There
of
you
nice
go.
because I don't have to deal with the maintenance.
And I'm assuming they like being there because of the proximity to all the amenities of the area, I'm assuming, or the big landmarks, the big attractions. The land
So
that you
both
have
of
is
our
valuable.
Yeah, so both of the parks that we have are actually both in ideal locations. One is right outside of Branson, Missouri.
Mm.
So if you know anything about Branson, Missouri, they get 10 to 13 million visitors a year. Lots of them are RV goers, lots of them are family oriented. And so it is so much cheaper for them to have an RV, bring it to our park for a couple of days, and take them back as opposed to renting 1 or 2 hotel rooms for their family. They also get the benefit of sleeping out. They can put a little tent next to their RV if they want the kids to sleep outside. They've got campfires, so they get to roast marshmallows by the campfire.
Mm-hmm.
We have live music next door. You can actually walk to some of the attractions from our park. So it's been nice. And then you disconnect from everything. And it's nice that
Yeah.
they get that family time where they get to just hang out and it's not a hotel room where they're in one room and you're in the other. So I feel like it's more of a bonding situation. You get to tell
Yeah.
stories around a campfire and stuff. It's fun.
Yeah.
Our other one is off of Route 66. And so that one's a huge transient group. People take that route. It's a very popular route to take every year. And we are actually right next door to one of the only drive-in theaters on Route 66.
That's cool.
And we're right between two actually historic cities that were major players in the Civil War. And so people come there to see the museums and all the history. And I think the Precious Moments Museum is actually close to us too, which has a huge pilgrimage every year. Next year is actually the 200th anniversary of the naming of Route 66. And it's actually, they named it in the location where my park was.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
That's
so
really
it's a
cool.
huge pool for next year. Yeah. So we do like vintage camper what do you call them? Pilgrimages where they bring in all these old vintage campers and people from the towns come in to tour them. And they come and stay for a week and hang out and talk about the things that they've upgraded and things like that. It's a really cool area.
That's really cool.
So
This lifestyle, you had no experience about how any of this worked prior to getting this asset.
I had never camped on a campground and I had never been in an RV.
Wow. And you were able to take this down and make it happen. What value add did you come in and implement with this to make it from a 2-star place to a 5-star place?
So so the first park that we purchased was located in a great town, very busy, should have been doing a lot higher numbers than it was. So when we went in to look at the park, we realized that it was extremely run down. It had not been upgraded in a long time. It had been around since the 50s. I think the last time it was upgraded, and it was in like the early 2000s. It had become overrun with long-term guests that had really taken the place over and made it not attractive. And it was scary. I remember driving into it, and the first thing I said to my husband was, "Turn around, we're not doing this." And he was like, "Really? You're not going to take on a challenge?" And of course, that was like, okay, well,
The ego came in. It's like, oh yeah, of
we
course.
got it. Yeah.
Yeah. I love
So
that.
we went in. And one of the first things I did was, when we knew that we were going to buy it, and actually after we had negotiated it, one of the things that I did was I whispered in the maintenance man's ear that I was making friends with the police station and that they were going to be an active part of our park, and that I was allowing the canine unit to come and train on our park periodically so that they could help increase safety in the community. And I was so excited about this. That got around overnight, and in the middle of the night, like a bunch of people just took off, grabbed all their stuff and left.
Wow.
So yeah, so that did a lot of heavy lifting for me. Yeah, I know.
That
I'm a
is so
genius.
smart.
No, it worked out really well. I was really actually, I didn't know if it would work, but it really did work. So a bunch of people took off in the middle of the night, didn't even call to ask for refunds. But the next morning, the day that we actually purchased the park, the next morning, the first thing I did was stop at the police station. I brought a bunch of donuts and I introduced myself to all of the police officers and just said, "I want you to know I'm the new park owner. I know that this place has been a thorn in your side. You guys have had multiple calls there." While we were closing on the park, they had 4 or 5 calls from people that had been either threatened or had weapons pulled on them in our park.
Wow.
And so I was like, cleaning the place up. I want you to know that I'm there, and I would really love for you guys to build a relationship for us. I was like, if you guys want to come in and get a cup of coffee, if you need a speed trap place to park, if you guys need a restroom on that side of town, or if you just need to take a break and you just need to finish paperwork, come please park in our parking lot. I would be thrilled to have you. We just want to build a good relationship with you guys. And so I invited them over for that afternoon to actually come and walk through the park to see the things that we were going to change. So a couple of them showed up.
Wow.
And that showed all of our guests that, oh, they're serious. Like, they're making friends with the police. Things are serious. And so we got rid of the last bit of them that needed to go that day.
Wow.
After they saw that we were making friends with the police station. So that got rid of a lot of heavy lifting. I think I have only actually had to kick out 2 guests. And one, we tried to make it work, but actually it wasn't even us that kicked him out. It was his doctors. He was not very healthy. He actually needed a heart transplant, and he lived with 2 very large dogs, and they were unsanitary for him. And so his doctors asked him to leave. And in that entire process, he got real volatile, and we actually ended up having to call the sheriff and have him leave. So then he, of course, claimed that I kicked him out, which was not what happened. His doctors asked him to. But anyway, so we kicked everybody out that was undesirable, that were making the park miserable for the guests that would have come and visited us, because our park has actually been a favorite of a lot of guests over the years. And they'd been scared away the last few years when the last owner had taken over because of these people that had moved in. We then moved in, we started demolishing a lot of the old buildings that really just needed to go. They should have been condemned. Nobody should have been staying in them. Added more pads. So we went from 68 to 80 pads. And then redid the community center, removed all of the furniture in the park so that it was a little more conducive to the flow of the way things moved. Redid all of the park benches, all of the tables, and just went online, which was a huge thing. Hired a great manager who's extremely friendly and just loves being there, and just made it a lot nicer environment. The first couple weeks we were there, we ran everything ourselves, and I went out and met every guest myself. Yeah. When I am on the park, I'll go out and meet all the guests and introduce myself to them and chat with them. And this last time I was out there, got to sit around and make toasties with our guests, which was fun. Never had one. Cool. It was awesome. And I think they liked the personal experience of just actually getting to meet the owners. So almost all of the people that I have met have rebooked for the fall, and they're bringing friends.
Wow. That personal touch, let's just say, like in hospitality in general, I think with automation and like even in the short-term rental space, I think getting that personal touch and really feeling like they're there and to experience the full width of the community, I think as humans, we want to connect with people. I think is just so powerful. I think that was so smart of you to do that. And not only that, so strategically thinking about how to partner up with community members. A big staple of the community is the law enforcement, right? Like that's huge. And the fact that you were able to go there and build those relationships, that's your superpower at the end of the day, is building these high level connections and connecting with people that are pivotal to your investment. And you've shown that. And I think that was a big staple of why things work out really well. And I'm going to go back even into the short-term rental world. Yes, you jumped in and you like maybe put some numbers up in your brain. Okay, this is going to make sense. But at the same time, you also trusted a realtor who you probably made a really good relationship with that helped you make that happen. The RV park deal came from somebody you knew in your mastermind or community that allowed you to take it down. And I'm sure other people helped you along the way on how to structure that deal. So you've constantly over time just built relationships with the right people that allowed you to take the deals that you needed to take.
Yeah, no, and I would agree with a lot. Like it definitely is a space where it is about relationships. Our second park, she didn't want to sell, was definitely not going to do seller finance. And we got that one at 100% seller finance, and actually kept the owner on as our manager for the next 3 years. And if she does well over the next 3 years and increases our profit by 25%, she's going to get a 5% equity stake in it. And but her whole thing was that she just liked us. She just was at a point where she needed something different. She didn't really want the owner aspect of having the park. She just wanted to be the manager, but she was working a full-time job and running the park, and she just couldn't do it anymore. And a realtor, a broker kept talking to her about selling, and she just didn't want to do it. And she was like, I just want you to meet this couple. And so when we went out and met her, we just connected really well and listened to what she wanted to do. And ultimately, she wanted to manage her park. And so we were like, what if we gave you the opportunity to quit your full-time job and just manage the park? And we did the owner background stuff.
The boring
and
stuff.
That was when she actually was asking 1.6, and she actually gave it to us for 1.3 and seller finance the entire thing.
Wow.
And so it was just about building that rapport with her and her knowing, like when I sat down with her and she was like, what do you want management to look like? And I said, you're doing a great job. I have nothing that I really need to change. So what do you want management to look like? And she was like, ultimately, I just want vacation. And so I told her, pick a month in the year and go. Tell me when. We'll cover the park. Go. And so she called me like a week later and she's like, I booked a cruise for the month of September. And I was like, awesome. We'll have you covered. And she's happy as a clam because she just wants to run her park. She doesn't want to own it.
That is incredible. That is incredible because there is a lot that goes in the background that people don't know. And look, that was just talking to somebody and figure out their motivator or their motivation to live? Do you want to just completely part ways and vacation for the rest of your life, or do you want something of purpose to do, like maybe manage the RV park? So I think that just takes a conversation, which is really powerful. So going back to the RV park, to backtrack to that one with the cops and everything happening, or you're adding value, what were the numbers on that deal post value add or post
Oh, let's see.
stabilization?
So we went into it, and the NOI on it was 250, 275. So we came in, added a new management, cleaned it up, added pads. So there were 68 pads, 31 of them are being used. And they were being charged $650 a month for each one of those pads. They were long-termers. We came in, turned it more transient. We kept a handful of long-term tenants, our guests. We never call them tenants in the RV world. We call them guests. We kept a handful of them to keep the lights on. If we're having a slow month, we know all the bills are being paid, including management. So we went from a $250,000 a year park starting from day one. We actually, the day we closed, we made $70,000 at the closing table and an acquisition fee for just doing the work to close the deal. So they paid us to close the deal. We closed it for zero money out of pocket, raised the capex, and then walked into the park and made 30 grand that day just on January payments. So we made $100,000 the day we closed.
Wow.
Cash flowing from day one. And we are right now on target to hit 375. So in the last 6 months, we've increased it by $100,000. And by the time we're done with the value adds, because we've got 4 extra acres that we're increasing on. We're going to put 40 more pads in. We're adding some cabins. Actually, we just seller financed and took over the loan on 2 RVs. So we're actually putting those, they're being detailed and put on the park and fitted out for nightly stays. So you can come stay on the park without actually owning an RV.
Sweet.
And actually we're seller financing 2 Airstreams that we're also putting on the park.
Sweet.
That are totally decked out. They've been completely renovated with zero money out of pocket on all of those deals. So we're increasing our NOI by those, I want to say between $100 to $150 a night. But we do plan on getting that specific park to just under $1 million in the next 4 years of cash flow. And that is actually just one that we're doing. We have one private partner on, private money partner on.
So that's net, right? 1 million net.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, we're hoping to 1 million net in the next 4 years.
What's the
yearly?
What's the cap rate for that?
God, let's see, 1.8.
Okay. So the valuation, what's the post stabilization valuation?
We went into it at a 14 cap.
14 cap. Okay, I can't do
So
that.
and now we're raising it. God, I'm gonna say like almost 20%. Is that right?
I don't know math. Off the top of my head, but you guys are trying to go for 8 million or 7.5 million ish post stabilization valuation. Okay.
Yeah. It's already been reevaluated at 3.2.
3.2 currently, but you're looking to do that extra development on the 4 acres. Okay.
Yeah. So we're hoping to get it to be about a $7-8 million park.
Amazing. And you bought it for 1.8?
1.8. Yes.
Now that's the power.
So we are hoping, yeah. But it's probably one that we will buy and we'll keep.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, we're actually moving into the fund space now so that people can take advantage of what we know how to do. And what we're actually planning on doing, as per our fund lead and our fund manager lawyer, what we might do is we actually might purchase the park into the fund. And that way, as we grow that park, since it's going to have such a big value to it, our investors will be able to benefit from it.
From that appreciation. So that would be
and
like,
that way everybody wins.
I think that would be a win for everybody. And I'm assuming that's going to be very tasty for a lot of investors to get in and see that potential. If you're interested.
Our RV park entry levels are very low. Even the first park, the second park that we did, like I said, it's 100% seller finance. The park manager stayed on as the park owner stayed on as our manager, which nobody loves the park more than she does. And she's amazing. She's already seen an increase in bookings since she's able to be there all the time and answer the phone. So that one we went into it and it was cash flowing 200,000 a year. And we are hoping to get that one in the next couple of years to about 500,000.
Amazing. What kind of technology are you guys implementing on the back end to make things more efficient? Is it similar to the short-term rental space? Like similar tools for
Kind
booking?
It is. There's a bunch of different systems that are used just specifically for RV parks. There's like New Book, Firefly, CampSpot. We use Staylist, which I like because it actually charges the end user, it doesn't charge us. So it kept our costs down. So some of the things that we did is we put it online, we added new websites, one-click reservations, new cancellation policies. A lot of parks are transitioning into a more pass-through billing. So we usually charge like our guests that stay longer than a certain amount of time, we actually charge them for their utilities, which they're meters that you add to each one, and it just sends a Wi-Fi signal to our computer system to tell them how much they used, and it automatically charges.
I love
The RV
IoT.
space is always, oh yeah, it's amazing. So everything just works out. It all just flows together. A lot of RV park managers, like I said, they've all been mom and pop. So everything is done pen and paper. You usually call them, you don't get information. So if somebody cancels on you or doesn't show up, you don't have any tracking. This alleviates that. We don't get a lot of cancellations now. They're all paid in full at the time of booking. So you get the influx of cash flow from the beginning, the pass-throughs. Then we added an ice machine, which should give us an extra $30,000 this year after it's paid off, it should increase from there. I think we'll pay it off in the first 6 months. We added a new community center. So you can use the community center freely, but if you want to use it privately for an event, then you need to rent it. We just hosted a guest's 100th birthday in one of our parks, which was amazing because I guess they've been coming there for years, which is something that you really want to do. Like I said, we're adding the RVs to rent nightly. I just had somebody talk to me on one of the Facebook pages where she was looking for something new to do in the area. And I was like, have you ever thought of camping on one of the campsites? So she was like, this would be totally different. That sounds like so much fun. And so she was calling my park manager today to book her stay in one of our RVs so that her and her fiance can go snuggle in front of a campfire for a little bit, but not actually buy an RV. So it'll be fun. We have a lot of guests who are bringing back family members because the park has been cleaned up and they love it so much, and it's just really nice. We have dog park, so they are able to have their dogs come hang out and have spaces to roam. We have a big community pit where everybody can get together. We're adding bundles of firewood to sell. We're adding a little market inside with necessities and things like that. So that's a value add increase. We have a water machine that is with our ice machine. So that increases that, and you can get all that there. We're adding a propane tank so you can fill your propane tanks, which adds another, value add. So everything that we're doing is strategic and making sure that everybody involved gets the biggest payout and maxes out what they can get from each of our parks. We're actually adding a pool to the first one, so that'll be good.
That'll be fun.
The second one already has one.
There's just so much you can do, and I feel like the land that you have, you can build cabins on because it's commercially zoned, so you can do a lot, which is awesome. I do want to get into the last three questions, and I ask this to every guest, and one special one for you. But the first question: what educational resource was probably the most pivotal for you, just in life, or you can talk about in terms of this world as well?
Oh gosh, in this world as well. Most educational resource?
Like it could be a book, it could be a podcast, it could be a community, it could be whatever.
You know what? I'm going to say lately it's probably been the world of creative finance.
There you go.
Learning that I can buy a cash flowing asset without any money out of my pocket has probably been the most pivotal thing I've done in our business. We went from having 0 properties 3.5 years ago to doing things conventionally and increased our cash flow by almost $500,000 in 6 months by learning one little tweak of how we can do it without using any of our own money.
The structuring. Yeah.
And yeah.
Was it the YouTube videos or was it Pace Morby's community? What was it?
It was based on his community. It was definitely the community because when we went into our first deal, we really didn't know what we were doing. We got the deal like a week in. We joined the community and a week in, we got the deal. And so we had no idea what we were doing and just threw terms out like, hey, would you sell or finance? We didn't know what that looked like. And so the community actually stepped in. There were particular people in the community that actually stepped in and helped us structure the entire deal.
Wow.
And taught us how to talk through it and walk somebody through it. And now that we know that, we look at every deal differently. So Patrick, my husband, has become a really good creative deal structure. Like he can look at a deal. Even our second one, we were having a hard time because she worked in the bank that she did the commercial loan through. And so they would know if she sold it. And so we actually did this whole creative thing where we actually ended up buying the LLC because her park was in her LLC and the land and everything was in it. So it was all owned by that. And we ended up buying that seller finance and kept her in at 5% equity. And so nothing ever changed. The loan stayed in place. And so it's not, we wouldn't necessarily always buy the LLC because there's a lot of situations that go on with that. But once we looked into it and did our due diligence on it, it was a safe bet. And that's what we ended up doing. And so there's just lots of different ways that you can do things like the hybrid deal that we did on the first park. We helped another couple with their LOI on their first park. They're actually closing in 2 or 3 weeks.
Sweet.
So we were able to help them structure a creative deal through that. And I think that moving forward, having the fund in place so that we can jump on them, we will always go into it creatively and see if we can finish it, if we can do it that way. But at least we'll have the ability to close on it fast or do the CapEx by having a fund in place. But it just saves everybody money and time. So being able to use that part of your brain and know and look at a deal and say, this is the 16 different ways we can structure this deal to make it work for you. How can we make this work? Has been extremely helpful in our negotiations with people because we can offer a higher price. We're not closing in cash. So especially in times like now with
high interest rates
and everything going the way that it is, it's just nice to be able to walk in and say, listen, let's use you as a bank as opposed to your bank. The bank is making all the money here. Let's make it so that you're taking more of that home.
Absolutely. And
So it's a win for everybody.
I agree 100%. That's a really great something that's really good for your toolkit when you're negotiating deals. I've done a lot of creative deals, including $0 down on both of my property or all 3 of my property the third one almost, but 2 of them for sure, all 100% either seller finance and private money finance. So, it's possible even with property management companies. I want to get into what's the future look like for Mychele.
Oh, actually this year we're really putting our head down and grinding. So we have dedicated the next 2 years to working on our Everest, our big mountain that we want to climb. And one part of that is building out our fund. We want to put 8 more parks in place so that we can have investors benefiting from our experience. We are re-putting basic structures and corporate structure in place for all of our different branches of what we do. Like I said, we've got lots of different, we also own 2 businesses in Chicago that need to be restructured. They've hit their peak mark. And so now we need to restructure those so that they can hit the next peak. So we are spending the next 2 years repositioning all of those things and getting them to their capacity again so that we can build from there. Building our relationships out with people who are in this space and making sure that we are doing everything that we can to help the other people around us. And ultimately what we want to do is we've got this plan and it starts with our fund. And so our goal over the next 2 years is to basically retire out 20 park managers that are ready to be done. We want to retire 20 of them out. In that process, we're going to hire 4 people per park so that we give 80 people a job. From there, we want to make them into hybrid parks where we're allowing some people to live on them long term. So we want to help about 400 people actually get affordable housing by living on our parks and have a more transient lifestyle and a healthier lifestyle. Because we want to add gardens and things like that to our parks and make it do farmers markets and stuff so that they have just a different purpose and they have a different lifestyle. They can travel and follow the sun. It's becoming quite a trend. And especially with affordable housing, it's a lot easier to buy an RV and live on my park than it is to live in an apartment building or a house. And in that process, we want to build a large enough cash flow so that we can ultimately, as a family goal, I don't know if Taylor's ever told you the story of her brother.
Yeah, she
but
mentioned it, but not too in depth.
So without getting overly emotional, we lost her brother when he was 6 years old. And he went into heart rejection. One of those complications with having a child that goes through something like that, when they're born and they have a heart transplant immediately, it costs about $250,000 after insurance to pay for the bills that come with that. And basically it devastates a family. You'll go through bankruptcy, you could lose your home, things happen, then you have this child with this major medical problem that comes into a family that's unstable at this point and financially insecure. We want to be able to, one family a year, pay those medical bills and make that our family legacy. Our goal is bigger than just us. It's bigger than just making sure that we are stable. We want to help families who really need it in the process. And so, like I said, it is a step process where we're helping all these people along the way over the next 2 years. But ultimately, our goal is to build out a family legacy. So
that's really powerful. And I think you guys are at a point where you're looking to give back. I think you've hit financial freedom from what I'm hearing. And I think you guys are at a point where I think that gives the most purpose in life, is to give back beyond just your family. I think that's just really powerful.
Yeah.
Jobs, charities, whatever the case may be. I'm going to be watching your journey, and I know you're going to crush it, Mychele. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm absolutely confident.
I've been watching yours, and you're doing phenomenal. I send a lot of people to you that talk to me about STRs. I'm like, I don't know, but I know a guy who does.
I guess we'll do that both ways, but good transition, because I know you're starting your fund now, and I'm sure the listeners want to hear this, especially they're like, okay, how do I talk to this Mychele woman? I want to talk to her maybe for inspiration or to invest in the fund or to get into RV parks. How can people reach you?
Actually, the best way to find me is on Instagram. I'm extremely active on there, and it's at Mychele Bisson, and it's MycheleBisson. So that is probably one of the easiest ways to get a hold of me. I'm also on Facebook under the same name, so you can find me there. So those are probably the easiest ways. Things get, I have so many things that go through my email. Sometimes they get lost. So if you reach out to me through one of those platforms first before you send me an email, then I'll know to look for it.
And you're big on social media now. I see you posting all the time. So I think there you go. Mychele, thank you so much for dropping so much value, opening up, and being totally transparent with everything. I appreciate you so much. And yeah,
inviting me on. This was fun. I hope that I gave your listeners some value. I hope that they actually learn to fall forward and not fear the unknown. So I think that is probably one of the biggest things that I think that everybody should learn, is to not be afraid of things that you don't know about, but to just put your head down and start learning as fast as you can.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to the Patrick Real Estate Show. If you found this episode helpful, please give us a follow and leave us a 5-star review. Your support truly means a lot. And connect with Patrick in the show notes below. Until next time.